about AC Milan for a second. They're traveling to Udinese. Rossoneri are out of Europe. And I wanted to quickly ask you, boys, Heath, beginning with you, how do you think this season, I know it's just December, but should be judged? Is it time to rethink the structuring of the club, or is it, does this need more context? Because really, getting to the knockout stages for AC Milan in many ways can be seen as overachieving. How would you see this AC Milan side as they now have one focus, and that's domestic competition?
Yeah, it's hard to say because, you talk about Zlatan, and Zlatan reminds me of Ronaldo in this context where he's your top performer. So you can't get away from him. It's impossible, right? When he's on the field, he scores all your goals. I think he's got 6 goals in 6 games in the league and obviously not scoring in Europe. But I look at this as a positive. And again, I've been referencing this for a while now, that AC Milan were the same team that last year, started the same as they did this year. Right on top, firing on all cylinders, and then they stayed in Europe. Inter Milan went out. Inter Milan goes out on December 9th of last year, and then they go on this run where they lose 1 game for the rest of the season until they wrapped up the title, ended up losing to Juventus after they had already wrapped up the title. And that's an opportunity now for this AC Milan side. Yes, I know AC Milan want to be giants of Europe again. They want to be seen as this team that competes for European trophies. But I think that you can give that up, but now you're not fighting for a Europa League title. And again, your focus is purely on this. Obviously, Inter Milan last year went out in the semifinals of the Coppa d'Italia. And AC Milan now have this opportunity to just truly focus on this one thing where it's not about player rotation. It's not about trying to manage all of these things. And I know it sounds stereotypical. The players don't look at it this way and say, oh, we've only got one thing. Let's just do this more or do this better. But it is their best opportunity to be able to put out their best team consistently and go after this title. They were multiple points up. I said that if they were 10 points clear, I think they could run away with it. Now they're in the thick of an actual title fight, and I worry about them in terms of their ability to have that consistency. I'd say they were done if they were still in Europe. They'd have no chance of winning the title or winning the league if they were still in Europe, just because of the pure fact. And again, I know it's the knockout rounds, and 2 games you could be done and whatever, but that as that lingers on, I think that could have a detrimental effect to this team that it's clearly not as deep as we thought they were, or as consistent as they thought they were. And from an identity standpoint, no Simon Kjær, obviously with his injury, so you losing that leader in the back line. And then you have Zlatan up top, where he is a system you have to build around. You cannot, I experienced this with Thierry Henry. Humble brag. We're about 42 minutes in. You cannot build a pressing system. And I actually know Zlatan does a lot more defensive work, at least shaping the field in a way that more than some of the other strikers do around the world, in terms of, hey, I'm just going to curl over this way and force the game over to this side, and I'm going to do it again to the other side. But it's hard when the game is constantly going past players that are supposed to be your first line of defense. It's very difficult to build a system. Your system has to be around those players. And I think that's a hard thing to do when you're trying to manage Zlatan and manage AC Milan. That's no knock on him. You signed him. You're getting what you want out of him in terms of his age and whatever. But that's also going to come with some consequences as well.
Yeah, this is somewhat of an interesting conversation. I think there are some easy parallels and should be considered, as Heath said, about falling out of Europe. Inter Milan obviously used that to their advantage last season. I do feel like Milan got drawn into the group of death. They were in pot 4 in the draw, and that was going to be difficult. First time back in the Champions League in 7 years. So in some ways, I think that their history works against them because they've had so much success. People are so impatient for Milan to get back to the top. And when it just takes time to get all that in place. Now, they were 12 points off the top of the table last season, getting second behind Inter Milan. And they were 1 point ahead of Atalanta and Juve. So it was all really kind of bunched together there, but no one was catching Inter once they got going towards the end of the season. Milan find themselves now hopefully leaning on that experience of how to weather that storm. Does it help them emotionally and psychologically? They don't have to worry about Europe. Yeah, 100%. I think that will help them and allow them to rest in a way that other teams that they're competing against can't. But I don't know yet if this team is there to take that big step. And so I'm curious as to the patience of the fan base for Milan, because they want it so fast, but you have to earn it. And it's like brick by brick, they say. And you have to lay those bricks. You have to lay the foundation for you to actually walk that path. And I don't know if they're there just yet. Are they building that process? Are we seeing it under Stefano Pioli? We are 1,000% seeing that. He has got a tremendous mix of younger and older players to lean on. Now it's like making those decisions. I like Franck Kessie a lot, but he is now winding down his contract where he might actually leave for free in the summer. So they have to make that. They don't want another Donnarumma situation where they have to now go spend money to go find some replacement when they already had a top player in a particular position. Those are the decisions where I think we're going to really see how serious this Milan team is to actually being a title contender season in and season out, where they weren't like that for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we're going to move on to Serie A, but before we do, the only thing I'll say is that I don't think Zlatan Ibrahimovic should be the focal point. He should be part of a project as opposed to the project itself. I think that's the best way, but very good point specifically on the process of AC Milan. All right, the rest of Serie A, by the way, Verona host Atalanta. That's going to be a tasty one. Simeone, no, not that one, his son, against the little team that could. I don't even call them the little team anymore, Desnor. They are like, that kind of stocky sort of rugby player that just gives zero shits about anybody. I kind of like him. But yeah, they're going to be facing Verona. That should be a good game. And Genoa against Sampdoria, the Derby de la Lanterna, Friday, 2:45 Eastern. All these games, by the way, as Des hopefully will put the fixtures on the screen. All these games you can watch exclusively on Paramount Plus. Before we say goodbye to Serie A, any final points on the Italian League? Keith Pierce and then Jimmy.
No, not really. These games are not obviously we've been spoiled so far this year.
Scroll bar. Sorry, Des. Yeah, go ahead.
We've been spoiled so much this year with the fact that Serie A has gone back to being a 6 or 7 team league of quality. That these are ones that these teams will be judged upon while they're not playing against or playing in the biggest of matches against the biggest of teams. This is where you got to get your points in the title race, right? Atalanta are in the form that they're in. They can beat anybody at the moment right now, but you have to continue to do that against the games that are less inspiring, against the teams that are going to, when you're Atalanta and you're facing off against the Giants, you come out with this underdog mentality. But now you're being treated differently, and you're playing against teams that are coming against you with this underdog mentality, and that's where you have to be able to get points to stay in the title race. So just another exciting weekend that doesn't have necessarily the biggest of matchups, but the ones that matter the most when you're talking about finishing in a top 4 position or being in a title race.
Yeah, great points. The one game though I would look at, and I guess it kind of uses Heath's points as a springboard, is Venezia hosting Juventus. Juventus obviously on paper should win this game. Thought they struggled actually against Malmo in the Champions League. They haven't really been flowing and having that rhythm that I think we have come to expect and know from Juve over the last couple of years, or maybe prior to that when they were winning all the Scudettos. Venezia, though, are really interesting. They beat Roma, then they beat Bologna, then they played Inter, Atalanta, hell yes, Verona, and now they got Juve. It's a really tough part of the schedule. This Venezia team is interesting, not only because they have 2 American internationals in Busio and Tessman, but because they had a 3-0 lead at halftime and they lost last week 4-3 to Verona. They need to figure out a way to, as they compete, can they still win games? I'm very curious about this Venezia team, and I'm curious to see how they do at home against Juve, and can they learn from that adventure from last weekend?